Hi, welcome back. So there's only one thing left I haven't done, and that is rate all 5 stars in one video. Yes, I've rated nearly all of them in my previous videos, but that was comparing them to one type of character, say DPSs, debuffers, buffers, etc. In this video I'll be rating all 5-star characters in comparison to all other 5-star characters. This is the comprehensive list to help you which character is the best investment for you. Before we start, you should like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this in the future. Only 7.4% of everyone watching is subscribed, so you should do your part and click that button. Other than that, join the Express Train Discord server and let's get onto it. So as in the 4-star rating list, which you should go watch, we'll be rating them in categories, and since they're all 5 stars, everyone is at E0. First, let's start with the DPS characters. The first character we should be starting with is Acheron. Not only is it alphabetical, but she's also arguably the best DPS character currently. Everyone knows Acheron can do a huge amount of damage. She can deal with both single target and multi-target fights since her multipliers are so high. She of course needs 9 stacks with her burst, and she gets those stacks by applying debuffs on the enemy. And since her talent requires it, the best way to play her is to grab 2 Nihility units and apply as many debuffs, preferably Death Shred, Rest Shred, and Vulnerability. Really, the best thing about Acheron, my honest opinion as to why she's so good, is that she doesn't need any Harmony characters. Of course you can use Sparkle with her, and while that team does provide around the same damage, maybe a little more than 2 Nihility characters, you're probably better off using Sparkle in another team. She also just got an upgrade in the form of Jiaoqiu, who you can use alongside Pella, making a diabolical team comp. I'm not gonna praise him much though, we're gonna talk a little more about him later. She's good in every single game mode. She does a huge amount of damage, she allows you to reserve your better 5-star Harmony characters for other teams, she does not care about enemy weaknesses, and she is hot as hell. She easily gets a 10 out of 10. Some people dislike that she's a little less versatile when it comes to team comp, but even if you only have Pella as a Nihility, like I mentioned earlier, you can use Harmony supports with her until you get more. Next up, let's keep it in Nihility and talk about Kafka. I've always sung her praises. She is very good. She can clear up to MOC 11 with simple 4-star DOT characters like Sampo and Gwenaifen. She is incredibly easy to build and play, like I said in my easiest meta teams to build video, which you should go watch. She benefits from every single DOT character that will ever come out. Even if another DOT detonator just like her comes out, they may honestly just be used with each other, making both her and the future hypothetical character even stronger. She's best paired with Ruan Mei and Black Swan for now, and together they can deal with a lot of the current content in the game. She's incredibly future-proof, very easy to build, works very well with even just 4-star supports. She's a very worthy investment. However, her damage is a lot lower than someone like Acheron. I'd rate her a 9 out of 10. Next up, Jingliu. I've rated Jingliu many times in many videos and my rating has always been the same, so I'll keep this short and sweet. She does a very good amount of damage and she's incredibly easy to build and play. She does care about enemy weaknesses unlike Acheron, and also does a little less damage than Acheron, so she's very good but Acheron is better. 9 out of 10 as well. Dill and Jingliu are very similar, they both do around the same damage with the same amount of investment. However, Dill's a lot harder to play and he really needs Sparkle to be effective enough, unlike Jingliu who still benefits from 4-star supports like Bella. I'll also keep this short and sweet, 8 out of 10. Firefly is up next. She's also one of the best DPSs in the game. She utilizes Super Break, which is probably the most OP mechanic in the whole game right now. Now, some people really hate the fact that she really needs the specific team of Gallagher, Ruan Mei, and Harmony MC to dish out the damage that she does, and while that is a very specific team, it's only one limited 5-star aside from Firefly herself. The other characters are a free E6 character that is really only useful on Super Break teams, and the other is a 4-star which you were able to choose in an event before. She still does an insane amount of damage. She doesn't do enough damage without her supports is an insanely bad argument, since most of team building is building supports around a DPS and not vice versa. She also has some very nice stat increases from her extra traces, so she does an insane amount of damage, and while a specific team is sometimes a negative, it can also be a positive because it makes her so easy to play and to use. She's also very easy to build, relic and Litecoin wise. She gets a 10 out of 10. She's very good. Next up is Yunli. She just came out this patch, she's surprisingly good. When she first came out, I honestly thought she'd be like just slightly better than Clara, but as I said in my destruction character rating video, which you should go watch, pretty sure E0 Yunli can do like double the damage of E6 Clara. She's very good. She's of course a counter-attacker, that's why I'm comparing her to Clara. She does more damage, and unlike Clara, she can heal herself. She can also taunt enemies to hit her, unlike Clara, who can only increase her hit chances. Now Clara doesn't need enemies to hit her, but you'd rather the enemies hit the tank than someone like Tingyun. She's already been abused enough, leave her alone, man. She definitely doesn't do enough damage or have enough versatility to be a 10 out of 10 though. She also needs enemies to hit her, which doesn't happen every single time, making her slightly RNG. I'll give her an 8.5 out of 10. By the way, her best support is possibly Ting Yun, who's of course a 4-star, that's always nice. It's only right that we rate Clara next. There's basically nowhere in the game right now where she's the best character now that Yun Li is here, which definitely drops her score. And as we said, Yun Li does way more damage than Clara. There's no reason to use her over Yun Li. But of course, Clara's a standard 5-star, and for what she is, she's honestly pretty good. She's very useful in pure fiction, but definitely not the best. She could be useful in the MOC and Apocalyptic Shadow, but she definitely needs a lot of investment to really be good and be comparable to the better 5-star DPS characters. She gets a 6 out of 10. Next up is Blade. He's bad in the current meta, I'm sorry. He doesn't do enough damage. If we ever get a support that can increase max HP by like 10,000, 20,000 points, he could be good, but for now, he's not. 5 out of 10. Another disappointing DPS is Jing Yuan. He has many issues in his kit, including once he gets CC'd, his Lightning Lord is also CC'd. Other than that, he doesn't do enough damage at all. Blade possibly does more. I'll give Jing Yuan a 4 out of 10. Argenti is also pretty disappointing, honestly. He was pretty good when he came out, but even someone like Herda, who's a free E6 4-star, is arguably better than he is. Jade, who came out more recently, is a lot more worth than he is. She's also a lot easier to build. He has 2 bursts, 1 low and 1 high energy requirements. This allows you to kill smaller enemies without having to charge up your whole burst. I don't think he has many more pros though. I'll give this man a 7 out of 10. There are better choices. Like Jade, who's definitely the best character for pure fiction right now. Her best applicator is arguably Herda, and those two together absolutely destroy pure fiction. Every turn they do like 5,000 follow-up attacks and kill everything in their way. Jade can be pretty good in the MOC, but only when 3 or more enemies are guaranteed, which is very rarely. Same thing for Apocalyptic Shadow. However, she trivializes one of the endgame modes, which is pure fiction, and you can beat it with simple 4-star supports like Herda and Yukong. Guaranteeing one of the endgame modes every cycle is a lovely way to start focusing on the others and finishing them up too. Jade isn't a must-have, but she's definitely very nice to have, and very worth it in my opinion. She gets an 8.5 out of 10. The reason Jade isn't a must-have is Himiko, who is a standard 5-star. She also works incredibly well with Herda and then with Jade as well. You can put them all in a team and watch the fireworks. Again though, you definitely don't need Jade. Himiko doesn't trivialize pure fiction as well as Jade does, but they're definitely pretty comparable. I'll give Himiko an 8.5 out of 10 as well. Again, she is not as good as Jade, but she is a standard 5-star. If you have her, you should absolutely build her, and eventually you will have her. Another standard 5-star is Yanqing. Unfortunately for this little dumbass though, he's not good. Don't build him. If you really want to, just make sure you have a shielder. His talent, which is what allows him to do damage, is dispelled every time he is hit, and in a turn-based game, you are absolutely going to get hit. 3 out of 10. Even Zila is a lot better than Yanqing. CN even still says she's S tier, but I don't think that's true at all. You can still clear MOC 12 with her as you can all characters, but you definitely need a lot more investment into her than you would need for other 5-star DPS characters. Her problem is that she can only kill one enemy barely, which means she can't proc her resurgence, and that just makes her a lot worse. She gets a 5.5 out of 10. A little higher than Blade because of Mono Quantum being a thing. Then again, Qingqiu is better for Mono Quantum than Zila. Let's lump Dr. Ratio and Topaz into one. They're honestly the same thing. If you've got Topaz, you've also definitely got Ratio. That means you have access to one of the best teams in the game. Pair them up with Robin and Aventurine and they'll destroy everything in their path. However, that team does contain 3 limited 5-stars, which is insane. And new players don't get Dr. Ratio anymore, so 4 limited 5-stars for new players. Really insane. However, the team is still very good. Alone, they don't really count for much. Dr. Ratio may do some damage with someone like Welt, but it doesn't measure up to any of the other 5-star DPSs. He gets an 8 out of 10. I'd say he's only a must-build if you have Topaz and are planning to use them together. However, Topaz will be one of the best supports for a future character, Fei Xiao, which definitely gives her more value, and she's very good for Hunt March 7th, who's the best 4-star DPS currently. She's very future-proof. I'll give her an 8.5 out of 10. She has more support capabilities than Ratio, and more team options than Ratio, but does a little less damage. Budel is up next, and he's basically a single target Firefly. He's pretty damn good. You can also argue that he really needs the Super Break team, which makes him bad, but we already broke down that argument. He does huge single target damage and is one of the best characters for one of the endgame modes, which is of course the Apocalyptic Shadow. He's a pretty worthy investment, but in my opinion, since Firefly is multi-target, she's possibly better. He does have more uptime than Firefly though, because he only needs his kill and not his burst. And just like her, he doesn't really care about weaknesses. I'll give this gay Cosmic Cowboy a 9.5 out of 10. Those are all the DPS characters, let's move on. Next up is support, both buffers and debuffers. Let's start off with a free E6 5-star everyone has, who is Harmony MC. I'm not gonna rate any other MC path, this is the only valid one. You shouldn't use Preservation or Destruction. They're of course the only character currently that can allow others to deal Super Break damage, and as we said earlier, Super Break damage is probably the most OP mechanic in the game right now. Any break effect scaling character becomes a whole lot more OP with Harmony MC's Super Break. I don't think we'll ever get any other Super Break applier, but if we do, Harmony MC will still have their place because they're free and very good. Other than Super Break, they have a few other buffs like increasing allies' break effect by around 36%, which is also very nice. Another Super Break applicator would need to be a lot better to be viable. I'll give Harmony MC a 10 out of 10. Build them, you have them, I know you do, and it's very easy to build them as well. Ruan is up next, and she's debatably the best support character overall in the whole game. She has like 50 different debuffs, so let's list them. Her skill increases allies' damage by 32% and weakness break efficiency by 50%. One major choice allows her to convert her own break effect for more damage percentage for her allies, up to 36%. Another major choice also gives 20% break effect for her allies. Her talent increases allies' speed by 10%, and when an enemy is weakness broken by an ally, they deal extra break damage equal to 120% of her break effect. Finally, her burst increases all-type press spam of all allies by 25%. She also delays enemies' actions by 1 turn when they're weakness broken. I can't give Ruan Mei any lower than a 10 out of 10. It's not a question of if you should get her, it's a question of when you're going to get her. She's very good in every single team in the game. Same thing for Robin, honestly, they're basically the same thing, but Robin favors follow-up attacks a little more. Let's also list the 50 different buffs she applies. First off, her talent increases allies' crit damage by 20% and gives her a little extra energy when allies attack. Her skill increases allies' damage by 50%, it's more than Ruan Mei's skill, but don't forget about Ruan Mei's talent, which when added with her skill, it adds up to around 68% extra damage. With Robin's 50 extra damage and then 20 crit damage for her talent, they're basically the same thing. Her ultimate advances all allies' actions by 100% and gives 22.8% of Robin's attack plus 200 for everyone. Of course, the biggest part about Robin is that she also does an extra instance of damage when allies attack during her burst. This makes her super OP with follow-up attack teams. One of her major choices also increases follow-up crit damage by 25%. Robin and Ruan Mei are very equal and both have room in every single account. Get both. Robin gets a 10 out of 10. You should ask the same question with Robin and Ruan Mei, and that's when you're going to get them. Branya is up next. She's incredibly good for a standard 5-star. She advances characters forward by 100% with her skill, and of course gives them 66% extra damage. Then her ultimate gives a bunch of attack and extra crit damage based on her own. You can get around 52 extra crit damage if your Branya has 200 crit damage. One of her major traces increases all allies' damage by 10%, but that's not a lot. She isn't as good as Ruan Mei or Robin because her buffs aren't team-wide and instead single target, and they're a lot less effective than Sparkle. Branya gets an 8.5 out of 10. Sparkle not only has slightly more effective crit damage and damage percent buffs, but she also provides your team with 4 extra skill points when she uses her ult. Not to mention, she increases the max skill point cap to 7. That is insane for every single team, period. You also get a lot more crit damage with her than Branya. Branya only gives around 52 as we said when she has 200, but Sparkle gives an extra 93 when she has 200. That's insane. But of course we can't forget Branya's 66% damage instead. Sparkle increases damage by 14.4% without her burst active, and by 44.4% when her burst is active. She's a lot better than Branya. Let's not forget another choice, which increases allies' attack percentage by how many quantum characters are in the team. She's also debatably the best 5-star support. You should absolutely get her, she's a 10 out of 10, no questions asked. There's a trend here by the way. 5-star support should definitely be your focus, and not DPS characters. Once you get 2 top tier DPSs, you should start focusing on supports. I'm also mentioning trace numbers here a lot more than with the DPS characters because support capabilities can be quantified a lot more than DPS capabilities. Black Swan is next, she's great. Okay, hold up, Black Swan is next, but her part in the script you've been listening to was actually written by memory. There's no incorrect information, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of missing information. So I'm recording this a couple days later to add all the missing information. Her previous score was going to be 8.5 out of 10, but as you'll see, I'm going to actually increase it after replacing the audio. First things first, Black Swan applies a shitload of Arcana stacks with her basic and skill. They first start at 240% of her attack at 1 stack, then each stack increases it by 12% up to a max of 50 stacks. This means at 50 stacks, Arcana deals 828% of Black Swan's attack. Of course it is almost impossible to get 50 stacks because it resets every enemy turn, but here's the cool part. Every time an enemy receives dot from an ally, they gain a stack of Arcana, and they can gain up to 3 during every ally's turn, besides Black Swan of course. Black Swan can also inflict extra Arcana based on how many DOT effects the enemy has. Lastly, every time an enemy takes damage from a DOT effect, they also gain a stack of Arcana. And Arcana is the last DOT effect to do damage, so you'll always have the maximum potential for it. All of this combined, without her ultimate you can reliably get 10 to 12 stacks of Arcana every enemy turn, but speedy enemies receive less of course. With her burst however, which applies Epiphany, you can bring that up to 20 to 30 stacks depending on enemy speed. That is 480 to 600% of Black Swan's attack, which by the way, you can apply up to 3 times, with Kafka's skill, Kafka's burst, and then the enemy turn themselves. You might also be able to do some like energy or turn delay shenanigans and keep it at like 50 for the whole battle, which in that case the battle probably won't last long, to be honest. What's more, Epiphany increases damage taken by enemies during their own turn by 25%, which of course just means DOT damage taken. It's kinda sad they didn't make it outside their turn as well. Epiphany also helps increase the stack count of Arcana, because it counts as the enemy having all dot stacks, which, as we mentioned earlier, the more dot stacks the enemy already has, the more Arcana they receive. Lastly, 3 stacks of Arcana makes it do AoE DOT damage, and 7 stacks allows all that damage and beyond to ignore 20% of the target's defense. Oh, and let's not forget that her skill also reduces def by 20%, so it's like having a Pella basically. And the cherry on this wonderful cake is that she increases her damage based on 60% of her effect hit rate, up to 72%. Black Swan absolutely clears Jiaoqiu when it comes to DOT, but again, we'll talk more about him shortly. He's coming soon. Comparing her to other 5 stars, Black Swan easily gets a 9.5 out of 10. She is nearly perfect at what she does. But the sad part is that she's only the best at what she does. For other applications, she's pretty mid. She would have been a 10 out of 10 if Epiphany also allowed enemies to take 25% more damage outside of their turns. For a DOT character, she is nearly perfect. If we were rating DOT characters only, she'd get a 10 out of 10, so easily. Next up, Welt. He's probably the most useless 5-star debuffer, and that makes sense since he's a standard 5-star, but still unfortunate because he's very cool. However, he can still be pretty useful. He slows enemies a whole bunch with his skill and imprisons them with his ult. He also increases damage taken by enemies when he uses his ult by 12%. Other than that, however, he doesn't have many other abilities that increase other allies' damage, only his own. He can be pretty fun to play, but when other characters are a lot better, he's really not worth it in my opinion. I'll give him a 5 out of 10. Next up is Silverwolf. She's a lot better than Welt. Let's start listing off the numbers. First off, she adds a weakness with her skill based on the characters in the team. However, it's pretty RNG. She reduces damage rest to whatever element she applied by 20%, and reduces damage rest to all element types by 10%. When you hit the right element, it's 30%, and to an extent that's pretty controllable. Her ult decreases a single target enemy's def by 45%. And then with her talent, she can apply 3 types of bugs when she attacks. She can either reduce attack by 10%, speed by 6, or defense by 8. She's pretty damn good. But unfortunately, she's only single targeted, which is her biggest fault. She would probably be a 10 out of 10 if she was multi-target. Instead, she'll get a 7.5 out of 10. You're so much better off getting a Harmony 5-star instead. She would have been only a 7 out of 10 if it wasn't for Apocalyptic Shadow, where she's useful when debuffing the boss. And now, last and possibly my least favorite, because he's so overhyped, Jiaoqiu. First with his talent. After all Ashen Rose stacks are accumulated, he increases damage received by enemies by 35%. With his burst, enemies receive an extra 15% ultimate damage, and Ashen Rose stacks are also applied on the enemy when they take action. This allows him to give Acheron her ult stacks faster. Now, even though I'm a certified Jiaoqiu disliker, I'll admit that he is good. In my opinion, he's really just not worth it, especially when not only Pella exists, but also other 5-star Harmony characters exist. You really don't need to get Jiaoqiu. When Acheron gets enough activation with Pella and Sparkle, I'd say he's only really worth it when you consider zero cycling to be important to you. He doesn't give enough of an upgrade over Pella to really clear the MOC much more efficiently than her, but if you're really a zero cycle slave, then totally get him. I just don't get why people are hyping him so much when other 5-star supports are so much better. Yes, he's better than Pella, makes Acheron a lot easier to play, but in my opinion, you really don't need to get him. You can survive on Pella until a better debuffer arrives, and that's probably arriving soon, honestly. I'll give him an 8.5 out of 10. I rated him a lot lower than Silverwolf in my debuffer rating list, which is honestly probably a mistake, but I rated Pella higher, which is definitely not a mistake. She's a 4-star and she's pretty much all that you need. Like I said, I'd again wait until a better debuffer comes out. The last thing about Jiaoqiu is that his Ashen Rose stacks deal dot damage. The thing that doesn't really make him better than Black Swan in this regard though, is that Black Swan's Arcana can stack up to 50 as we mentioned, while his Ashen Rose can only stack up to like 5. Gwen also provides around 20% extra damage received with her Fire Kiss, which is the same debuff that he applies, just less. You can use him in DOT teams, but if you're planning to pull him for DOT teams, then I would honestly wait for an even better DOT applier later on. TLDR, because I ranted a lot about him. Jiaoqiu mostly isn't worth it in my opinion. There are better characters to invest into. If you want to pull him for Acheron to use him alongside Pella, then absolutely do so. But if you already have Sparkle and want to replace Sparkle with him in that team, then do not do that. Also, if you don't have Sparkle, pull her instead. She's much better for most players, and for DOT teams you can get him, but if you have Black Swan and Ruan-Mei, I would also use them over him. And wait for a better DOT applier to come out, and if you don't have Ruan-Mei, then wait for her rerun. And if you're using Ruan-Mei for Super Break, then sure, you can get him, but I would honestly use Gwenaifen and Sampo over him. Not because they're better, but just because they're 4 stars, and you don't need to invest into them as much as you need into him. When it comes to zero cycling, in my opinion, and in the opinion of about 80% of players, let's just say, it doesn't really matter. If you really care about zero cycling, then he will help you with an extra couple of turns. But if you don't, and by probability you don't, then stick with Bella and the Harmony 5 stars. Stop overhyping Jiaoqiu so much. This video is already very long. Let's just quickly talk about the sustains. Luocha gets a 7 out of 10, he has insanely good healing, but that's not enough these days, especially when Gallagher competes with him and has more buffs and debuffs than him. Wowo gets a 9 out of 10, it would be nice if she had more emergency heals, but her healing is already great and she also gives some extra attack percent and energy with her burst, making her very good. Japard is... Don't build Japard. I guess you could, but he's not that good. 5 out of 10. Fushuan and Aventurine are a lot better. Both of them are the best sustain units in the game. Aventurine provides a lot of shield and a little extra crit damage taken by enemies with his burst. He also does a follow-up attack every once in a while, which is OP in certain teams. Fushuan provides around 11% extra crit rate when her field is active, and she redirects damage taken by allies towards her. She also heals allies with her burst, and also once every wave starts. I'll give both of them a 10 out of 10, and that's it! Bruh. Very long video, my longest rating video by far, I think. I hope you enjoyed though. Remember to subscribe since only 7.4% of everyone watching is subscribed. Other than that, like, comment, and ring the bell for more content like this in the future, and join the special and Discord server for a community filled with content like this, and I will see you next time.